Welcome to Dominate Your Day podcast. This is the podcast that adds value to leaders who want to make a difference in the workplace. We believe each person is unique and has a purpose they can live out every day and make an impact in the world. Here at Dominate Your Day podcast, we hear stories from leaders who have used their unique talents to transform themselves and their companies from the inside out.
Welcome to Dominate Your Day. I am very excited to introduce you to Amanda Greaves. Amanda is a unique person. I just got to meet her and get to know her. But what I found interesting is that Amanda has not only been a leader and been in the design business for over 20 years, but she's also an author and a speaker. And I love her story right now because we're kind of coming in at a really unique time of her life as she's making a transition. So I invited her to the show so she could share what's going on because I think there's a lot of you out there going through a transition and I think you can relate to this. So welcome to the show, Amanda.
Thank you, Dana, so very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well,
I'm
great.
very
And
thankful to
Amanda,
be
you
on the
have
show.
a unique story. So tell the audience you've been running a interior design company for 13 years, your own business for 13 years as a leader, an entrepreneur,
Mhm. Yeah.
and kind of got burnt out, right? And said, okay, I'm going to do something different.
I I I certainly did. I 13 years, it was awesome. I've been in the industry for 20, but I'd say even before COVID started, I started to feel as if I wasn't being valued the
Mm,
way that I knew I could be. And I ended up with working with a client that had been working with for 6 years. And I was also in a relationship with a man for 3 of those 6 years. And so it all, at the end of it, at the end of last year, the client was demanding and he wanted me to lower my fees. He wanted me to raise my abilities. He wanted me to do more for less. And we came to a crossroads. And I finally
mm,
said, I just can't do this anymore. I have a team of 6 employees. They're all budding designers, and we all work really well. But I ended up sending an email at the end of last year telling him that he was kind of fired as a client, and um, it was 50% of what our projected
wow.
revenue was going to be for this 2023 year. So it was a big move, but for the health and wellness of myself and the rest of my staff, it was something that had to be done. But simultaneously, I had been dating a man for 3 years, and there was this really really unbelievable push-pull dynamic. He was there, he was gone. He was, "I love you, I'm sorry," and then he'd disappear, and I got sucked into this warp, that at the end of the day, I realized when one of my therapists was saying, "Hey, have you ever heard of borderline personality disorder?" Or, "Have you ever thought that maybe this guy is a narcissist?" And because I'm a
Mm,
researcher, I started looking it up. And beyond looking up those elements, I realized that on the flip side, most of the people that have those types of conditions either don't know it, and if they do, they don't do anything about it. But the people that are being affected by them are being affected in such horrible ways where you lose your self worth. You get to a point where you feel like you're on a roller coaster and you can't get off, and you are hungry for them to come back to you. And so this had been going on for a couple of years, and almost like a year ago, the end of December of 2022, my cousin, thankfully, she put the pieces together, and the proximity was just so strange. But she said, "I think you have been dating one of my best friend's boyfriends." So we did some math. I got on the phone with the woman, and we cross referenced our calendars as to when he was there and when he wasn't, and it was an exact match. And plus, she sent me some
yeah.
photos. I sent her some photos, and so it had been a long time coming. But after those two instances where I finally was like, I can't work for this guy anymore, and oh my god, I can't spend one more second thinking
Mhm.
about this narcissist over here on the other corner. I got to the point where I said everything in my life needs to change. I have been running in a circle. I've been going up and down on this roller coaster for far too long. I really need to gain some stability. Literally. And I went through multiple conversations with my coach, a couple different therapists, and starting in April slash May, I had been working on a, let's call it an extraction out of my design firm for being responsible for the day to day and a lot of the projects. And I started writing my
Wow.
book.
I mean, that is, I mean,
So,
you say it so, I mean, you've got this, you've got your history down, but it's like at the same time, that's a lot. And I want to
oh, yeah.
applaud you for saying no to things that aren't good for you, and how hard that is, and how many people are out there holding on to things that probably aren't good to them, especially female leaders that are in both working relationships and business relationship, I mean personal relationships. So that's hard. What helped you do that? It sounded like you had a team around you, coach, therapist. Yeah.
I had a small team, but it had gotten to the point where, quite honestly, I was taking a walk with one of my neighbors, and I was telling her the same story again and
Mhm.
again and again and again, and she said she finally just stopped in the middle of the street, and she looked at me and she said, "Amanda,
That's
are
a
you
great
done yet?"
question.
And I was like, "How
Mhm.
dare you ask me that?" I didn't say that to her, but that's how I felt, and I thought, "Oh my god." I'm getting chills now even as I'm
Mhm.
remembering where we were in the street, and I thought, "Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm done." And I, like, somberly walked home, didn't do anything that night, like, let my nervous system accept what had just happened, and I thought,
Mhm.
"This is it." Like, Amanda, you're 47 years old. You never had the children that you wanted because you threw yourself into your business. You threw yourself into your business because you were upset that about a relationship. Like, you've been trying so hard to prove yourself to everybody in the world, but the only one that really matters is you. Why don't you start paying attention to what it is that you
Mm.
really, really want? And and when that started happening, I thought,
Mhm.
"Oh my god." The first thought that came through my mind was, "God, I've wasted 47 years, da 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 da," and then I thought, "No, no, 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 I haven't wasted anything.
Mhm.
I've had an amazing life." And a lot of this is trained mindset changes that I've been learning over the last few years. I think I told you that I
Mhm.
jumped on the Tony Robbins train back in 2018, so I've been to 12 events in the last 5 years, and by going to all of those, naturally, I have started to shift my mindset to appreciation instead of expectation, having an attitude of gratitude, and knowing that this life and all of the nonsense and all of the pain and the
Mhm.
anguish and the suffering that I was going through, pulling myself through, pushing myself into, all of it is
Mhm.
happening for me because this is the path that I needed to
Wow.
take
And
to
how do
get
you
to
feel
here.
now?
I feel like I'm just about to come out of my cocoon like a butterfly. I've got like another month
Mhm.
of burrowing down, doing the work, maybe another 6 weeks, and quite honestly, by the end of the first quarter of 2024, I'm just taking off like a rocket ship. And that's I'm holding on to faith very strongly, to that belief, and that's how I feel.
Mhm.
I'm full of faith within myself. There's not a week that goes by that I don't cry because I'm completely overwhelmed with everything that's happening. But then I go for a walk and I think, "Nope, this is good. There's After
Mhm.
contraction comes expansion. You're just in a little bit of
Mhm.
a hold right now.
And there's
It'll all
people
let go soon."
listening that might be on the other side of that, or be right where you are, or be a little bit earlier where you were when you said, I've got to make a change. They just don't know how to make the change. So, who did you write the book for that you've been working on since May that I want you to tell us about? And the name of the book is, what is it? Yeah, tell us the name of the book.
The name of Yeah, it's The Chameleon Diaries, Designing a Life Worth Changing For. And there's a bit of a play on words because of the interior design aspect, and then let's
Mhm.
call it the metamorphosis, the transition that I've been making this past year. Um, and it's interesting because when it got to the dedication page, I thought, "Oh, this is easy. I'm writing it for all of the me's that
Mm.
I have been in the past." The young girl that got pressured into having sex too early, the young adult that decided to travel around Europe on her own and then realized that this is everything that she wanted to do, but then still had to prove herself, so she went over here and she went over there, and you know the young woman where 2 years ago my self-worth had been lowered so much from making the wrong decisions to date the wrong men, or for not having strong enough contracts in my company that my clients saw the
Mm.
loopholes and they jumped through them, with parachutes saying, "Woohoo, we got it." And it's for all of the women out there, as you mentioned, that are going through transition, that have been through it, but also more so for the ones that are too afraid
Mm.
to make a move. It's that whole world of limiting beliefs that I have lived in, that where self-doubt rules, whether you want it to or not, whether you have the ability to acknowledge that it's ruling or not, and you
Where
stop
does the
before you
limiting
even get
beliefs come
started.
from, do you think, when you were doing your work?
When I was doing my work, I found that a lot of my limiting beliefs, they developed when I was, call it
Mhm.
like 0 to 6 or 7 years old. And that's the scientific data element where, you develop the majority of your psyche and your
Mhm.
learned habits from 0 to 7. You develop your relationship understanding with the environment that you're in at that age. And my parents are still married. They still love each other to death, and they love myself and my brother to the end of the world. They've always been there for me. They
Mhm.
haven't always agreed with what I've been doing, but they've always been there for me. And my dad traveled a
Mhm.
lot when I was young, a lot. And there would
Mm.
be weeks where he'd be gone. And I found that although he was there, when he was there, he was coaching my brother's hockey games
Mm.
or he was racing boats. And so even though we did things together as a family, I only have 1 or 2 specific memories of spending time with my father. The rest of it was spending it with my mom, who I love, but she
Mm.
wanted me to be a mini me version of her, and I was
Mhm.
so different from her. So, what I was learning from 0 to 7 when my dad wasn't traveling and my mom needed a companion was that I was filling the space for him, but
Mhm.
I didn't have the ability to do that, and so, when I didn't fulfill things, I was like, "Oh god,
Mm.
well, maybe I'm not enough." And then, "Oh, well, Amanda, why did you do that?" "Well, oh gosh,
Mhm.
maybe I'm too much." And it was that self-doubt really started to dive in. My coach brought up to me one day, which I started crying instantly, and it still sinks in now every once in a while. I said, one of the main topics of the book was going to be, and there is still weaving points of it, talking about self-doubt
Mhm.
and how I have so much of it or how I have had it." And she said, "Nobody's ever gonna believe
Mm.
you. Nobody's going to believe that you have a lot of self-doubt." And I said, "You're absolutely right." And she said, "So why do you think that?" And I said, "Oh my god, I've
Mm.
been using it as fuel." There's in the communication world, you're either running
Mm.
from pain or running towards pleasure. I've been running from pain my entire life. I didn't know that I could actually run towards pleasure. I've been running from my self-doubt,
Mm.
trying to prove everything. And those limiting beliefs started when I was young, and so, I was always getting in trouble
Mhm.
because I was too loud. I was always, I was always getting in trouble
Mm.
because I just didn't like the rules, and
Mhm.
they didn't apply to me. So it's like trying to fit like a
Mhm.
square peg into a round hole, and that's how I have felt so much. And I didn't realize that all I needed to do was just go find a
Mhm.
different hole. Just needed to surround myself with the types of people that I could actually communicate with better. And I feel that this year of cocooning myself in and writing my book has really given me the opportunity to create space for the people that are out there that do connect
Mhm.
with me on a higher level, that I know I can communicate with at a different place that is more meaningful. It has a deeper connection and it resonates not just here and not just here, but it resonates
Mhm.
way up here. And why that's why transition, like I said, after the contraction comes the expansion. I'm starting to lean into this transition with a lot of faith, a lot of hope, a lot of confidence that when I come out on the other side,
Yeah.
it's
Big
put your sunglasses on because it's gonna be a lot. And I'm like all of the
Mhm.
me that I've been holding
There's
back.
so many
It's
people like you that wanna do this, and they're scared because and I think one of the things you did, you laid
yeah.
down your career, you laid down, you cocooned at home, and you said, "I'm gonna get this done." And so when we think about what you're
Mhm.
made of, when I look at your strength, and we went just saw your Clifton strengths, that you actually have achiever, you have strategic, futuristic, activator, learner, and it is achiever. So what
Yep.
you really disciplined yourself, it sounds like, to make yourself do this, to say no to some good
Oh,
things
yeah.
and no to some things you don't want in your life anymore, and to give yourself this space.
I did.
And not everybody can do that. I mean, that takes time, but I think you created an opportunity for yourself to do it. Yeah.
I made yes, I did. I definitely
And so
intentionally
when I
created
say
it.
not everybody can do that, they don't think they can do it, but they can. They can make the change.
They can, and I will never tell
Right.
you that
It's
any
gotta
of
be
this has
hard,
been easy.
but you're making something
You
new,
know,
and that's
it's
hard.
it yeah, I mean, like, people use the same analogy, or like Tony Robbins uses it. He goes, you don't have a child, and if after 6 months, if they don't start walking, you don't just be like, "All right, I give up on you. I'm not doing this." You have to walk. You have to
Mhm,
crawl before you can walk, and walk before you can run. And 2 years ago, I broke my foot. How ironic, right? And it was a big, big, big sign from the universe that said, "This guy is toxic. You have
mhm.
to get away from him."
Yeah,
I didn't listen. I just pulled on, I just kept going,
yeah.
and it hurt. And it hurt physically. It hurt. I had anguish, which love Brene Brown. I
Mhm,
finally understand what that word means. I listened to Atlas of the Heart at least 2 times. I have the whole
mhm,
book, sticky note tabs and everything. And her definitions of some of the words, I was
mhm,
like, God, anguish. What a treacherous word to be looking
mhm.
at, but I felt it over the last couple of years, and then I thought one day, I don't ever wanna feel that again if I have the ability to control my environment as much as I can. And it's not a control thing, it's understanding
Mhm.
doing the hard things are totally worth it in the end, because same thing, if it was
Yeah.
easy, everybody would
And the
be doing it.
transformation doesn't
And
take it's like a thawing, right? You've been thawing out from all of this. So it takes time to thaw out,
yeah.
and it takes time. So giving yourself this time and space to do this and write this book is incredible. And I want to encourage people out there, when you're going through something pretty tough like this, take the time and give yourself a timeout. Give yourself a break. There's so many women right now that are burned
Oh,
out
yeah.
because they can't get off the hamster wheel and they don't know how. And
And sometimes, and this is where I can relate this directly back to the relationship, is I jumped off the hamster wheel, "Not doing this anymore, I'm all done," and
mhm,
then I'd jump back on again, because the limiting beliefs crept back in. I didn't understand how deeply rooted they had gotten
mhm,
into my psyche. I didn't really understand. I needed to create better habits in order to replace the bad ones. And so I kept jumping
mhm,
off, and then I kept jumping back on again. And then I would jump off, and then I would jump back on again. And it's people talk
mhm,
about doing the work. It's doing the hard, hard, hard work. And for me, I ended up getting a therapist who
mhm,
is trained in EMDR, which is eye movement disassociation reprogramming.
I've heard of
I
it.
never get the R
Yeah.
right. EMDR. Yeah. And so that's where I really started to learn and understand the inner
Mhm.
child work that needed to be done. I had to go back to my 4-year-old self and genuinely hold her and tell her that this, hey, this is
Yeah.
okay. You're going to be fine. And go back to my 14-year-old self and my 17-year-old self. And I went back into places that I had so intentionally forgotten. I couldn't imagine that they had actually still survived my, burning of the diaries, or because I had a
Yeah.
bonfire one day and burned out my diaries. Um, but it was cleansing. And then during all of that, I took a 5-day vacation, if you will, to resort and spa in Austin, Texas. Actually, I went to
Mhm.
Miraval for 5 days, and I had made this great plan. I had this whole schedule set up, and when I got there, they were like, "Oh, we changed this class and we decided to put you here." I was like, "What?" And then as I went through it, halfway through, I thought, wow, this is exactly what I needed at the exact right time. And the order is done. So I just let go and let it happen. And
Mhm.
I got rid of even more baggage. I left so much stuff in
Wow.
Texas. It was awesome. But it was
Mhm.
that spiritual
Yeah.
cleansing that I also needed.
It's incredible to
And
see, and I'm glad we're coming in now in this part of your story, because who knows, a year from now, after the
hmm,
book's out, the book will be launching in February, right? And so tell us a
that's right.
little bit about what people can expect in the book and how to use the book. Is it a chapter to chapter book, or is
Sure.
it something they can pick up and do?
So I could go through the whole how it happened story, but I'm just going to get right into it. So the first chapter is actually called Pivotal Moments, and it is that December 11th, December 12th, 2022 story of finding out that the guy I'd been dating had a girlfriend for the same exact time that we
Mm,
had been together, and firing my biggest client that I've ever had. And so it's
yeah.
Pivotal Moments Part 2 is the very first chapter of the book, and then it spirals us back into 8th grade, where I didn't wanna do something with a boy, so I got dumped, and then I got unfriended from all of them, and then they made fun of me for the rest of the year, so, like,
Mhm.
those limiting beliefs started to creep in, and then it just continues. Couple stories from college, how I got married and moved to Australia after college, how that fell apart. And it just moves through the cycle. But each individual chapter, there's a lesson to be learned, or there is a reader transformation. So there's a message at the end of each one. Fitting in and standing out, understanding your limiting beliefs, learning how to clarify your dreams,
Mhm.
get very specific. Um, figuring out, recognizing your
Mm,
relationship patterns, understanding what your triggers are. And so once you get into each one of those chapters, there's a story of my life. That's why it's mostly memoir. But the lesson is in there. And then there's questions at the end of each chapter that are in the Dear Diary format, just to prompt the reader to think about what they just read and
mhm.
how does it relate to their life? Has there ever been a time in their life where they've done something that they didn't want to? Has there been a series of bad habits that they keep looking at saying, God, I wish I could just stop doing this? I do have a type of guy. He's a narcissist, every single one of them,
Mhm.
or take the time to ask yourself the question after you've just read this ridiculous story or this really exciting story or this dynamic story
Mhm.
or this sad story and say,
Mhm.
did it hit you in the feels? Is it something that you can resonate with? And if so, give yourself a few minutes to try
You
and
know what's
dissect
interesting
it a
that I'm
little bit.
picking up? I'm looking at your talents. You have strategic. So strategic looks at the big picture and can always spot the patterns.
Yeah, that's
So I'm like, there
it's
we
yeah,
go. You've got I keep hearing this theme
yeah.
of patterns. There was this pattern, and we all pick them up, right?
Mhm,
We carry patterns with us from childhood, and we just keep them, but we don't have sometimes stop, take a break, like what you're doing, and look at the patterns. Are these serving me? Are these hurting me? How do I stop? And so it sounds like your
mhm,
book will really help
yeah,
people be aware of patterns that they may have in their life and how to stop them. Yes.
yeah. prior to the editing process, there was 5 or 6 chapters that were specifically
Wow.
related to patterns. So those insinuations are definitely still sprinkled in there, but there's only 2
Yeah.
specific that call it out intent. But yes, it is all about recognizing your patterns, and, um, my coach said to me once, years and years ago, "You know, Amanda, how you do
Mhm.
anything is how you
I
do
love that.
everything." And I got it, but I was like, "I don't really understand," and until I saw that I was dating the same guy that I was trying to, work
Right.
with. It wasn't the same person, but they were the same character, 2 different bodies, 2 different experiences. I started looking around, I was like, "Gosh, this is pretty consistent." And then I took another step back and I looked at how I was running my life, my personal life, and how I was running my business, and there were patterns everywhere. And I really genuinely feel that I've done my design firm a big I don't want to use the word favor, but I've done my design firm a big
Mhm.
service by stepping back, because I was not doing the firm nor the clients any good in the state that I have become in, or the state that
Well,
I
and
was
here's
in
the
at the end of
thing.
last year.
We talk about this a lot, especially coming from the airline industry, but we're so good about
Yeah.
taking care of everybody else and seeing the patterns everywhere else, but really looking at the patterns
Yep.
inside yourself was harder, right? Because
Mhm.
you could spot the patterns whether it was in
It was
work or what a person, but then when you start looking inside, it's really hard. And you did that work.
well, because
Yeah.
you might not like what you see, and it's easy to walk away
Mhm.
from it. "Oh, well, whatever." But, like, the strangest part that we all forget is that
Yeah.
it's coming with you. You can run away from whatever you wanna run away from, but if you don't take a step back and dig in and really, really learn who you are from the
Mhm.
inside out, instead of just looking at the outside to stay distracted so you don't have to look inside, it will catch up to you someday.
Well,
And
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 now
and it
look at
caught
your
up to
new
me.
future. You've got
So,
futuristic. So tell me what that looks like for you. What does that look like and feel like?
uh, it's funny. I'm not 100% certain, and I'm actually okay with that, but my goals are becoming a motivational keynote speaker. And I've already spoken in a couple instances, and there are quite a lot of organizations around where I am where they're like, "Amanda, we love your energy. We want to get you on stage next year. This is how we're going to do it." I bet there's at least a couple more books inside of me,
Mhm.
but I have to get through this one first. And I'm just going to be launching my website soon, but there is also going to be the
Mhm.
coaching consulting aspect to what it is that I've learned. I'm utilizing the book as a primary stepping stone, but also as one of the primary tools to create online coursework. I want to be doing up to 10 to 12 people within a group to do weekly masterminds where we talk about leadership. We talk about
Mhm.
moving through the process. We talk about recognizing who we are, what our patterns are, and working together as a team to ensure that
Mm.
nobody feels like they're an island, and they know that they have a support system, because that is one of the main things that I always felt like I never had, was a support system. And so I want to be able to create that platform for other women and men, if necessary, but primarily other women, to come in and say, "Gosh, I want to be around this energy. I want to be around the people that are
Mhm.
actually doing the work. They've been there. It might sound a
And
little
there's
different, but God, it
there's
feels the
something
same."
about
I
you're
want
the sum of the people you hang out with. So being able to hang out with people that help you be your best self instead of living in that darkness,
Yeah.
right? It's amazing.
Yep.
So Amanda, as we get ready to close down, I've loved hearing your story and thank you for being vulnerable today and sharing. Is there anything else that
Oh, thank you
you
so
didn't
much.
get to share about the book or story or a takeaway from the book that you want to make sure the readers or the listeners get to hear today? And then we'll let them know how to get the book.
Sure. This past February, so when I decided that I was already leaving the company, well, not leaving, but taking a sidestep, I had one of
Mhm.
those come to Jesus moments, literally at an event where I met a pastor and his 3 associates, and I went through the whole Father, Son, Holy Ghost. He was pulling demons out of me that there's no way he could have known that they were there. And, at the end of it, and I had been crying and crying and crying and crying through the entire sermon, and I was like, "I don't know where this is coming from." And to date, I haven't been a very religious person. I've always had a soulful purpose and a spirituality about who I am, but there was this awakening inside of me, and after he did the whole thing and kind of tapped me on the forehead and I fell down yelling and screaming in the whole 9 yards. Everything changed from that point on, and I feel that the only reason why I was able to actually hear the messages and be available and open myself up enough for those gentlemen to connect with me and my soul was because I had done the work. I had peeled back the layers. I had gotten rid of so much of the nonsense by the
Mhm.
time I had reached them that I was able to hear what they needed to say. I was able to open myself up and make space for whether you call him God, Jesus, whatever Allah, whatever you want to call him. There was space for my divine spirit and my higher self to finally say, "Ah, thank
Mhm.
God. I've been here the whole time. You finally took all those layers
Yeah.
off. Thank you so much." Um, and that's a chapter in the book as well. But the book is being launched the end of February, and I'm having a big launch event on my birthday, which is
Aw,
Leap Day, February 29th, 2024. So I'm using it kind of as a catalyst to just move on and say, okay, this is my next trip around the
there's your
sun. Let's
activator.
get this going.
It's like,
So
"Let's go. Let's go."
there's my
That's awesome.
activator.
Okay, so tell folks where they can get your book. Um,
Yes, right now it
okay,
will be on sale on Amazon. So I believe that that will be available
okay.
probably starting mid-January, mid to late January. My website is amandagreaves.com, and that's
Mhm.
AMANDAGREAV as in Victor, ES as in Sam.com. That's up and running. I have a few tweaks to make, but it
That's
should be
great. I
ready to
always tell
roll by
people just get it
February.
out
So,
there. Don't get perfection. Just it's
yeah,
the kind of the message of this is
yeah,
just get out there and share your story as I mean, we're never going to be perfect until we go to heaven, right? So we're just a work in progress. So, thank you for sharing your work
yeah.
in progress with us. Thank you for sharing your book. We'll put everything in the show
Uh,
notes, and we just wish you the best, Amanda, and taking the brave step to step down and do the work. And now you're going to see the fruit of all that. So, okay,
Dana, this has been wonderful. Thank you so very much. I feel honored to be on your show, and it's been a
thank
pleasure
you.
speaking with you today. Thank you.
You have been listening to Dominate Your Day podcast. If you're ready to transform your life and workplace from the inside out, go to danawilliamsco.com and set up a discovery call. We would love to connect with you and equip you with some helpful resources. Thank you for listening today, and please take a moment to subscribe to Dominate Your Day wherever you listen.